There is a moment, out in the wild, when curiosity gets the better of almost every person who has ever stood face to face with something extraordinary. A creature that seems impossibly beautiful, or impossibly strange, or impossibly close. And in that moment, the hand reaches out. It is a deeply human impulse. It is also, in many cases, a deeply dangerous one. The natural world is filled with animals that have spent millions of years perfecting their defenses. Venom that can stop a human heart in under an hour. Spines that inject toxins directly into the nervous system. Skin so laced with poison that a single touch can send a grown adult into cardiac arrest. And yet these animals are not aggressive. They are not hunting us. They are simply being what they are. The danger is not in their nature. The danger is in ours. If you have ever wondered which creatures in the wild demand the most respect, the most distance, and the most careful restraint of that reaching hand, stay right here. Because what follows is not a list of monsters. It is a window into some of the most remarkable animals on Earth, and an honest account of what happens when humans get too close. Make sure you subscribe before we go any further, because what is coming will completely change the way you look at the natural world around you. We begin in the shallow coastal waters of the Indo-Pacific, in places like the Philippines, Indonesia, the Great Barrier Reef, and stretching all the way to the Hawaiian archipelago. The water here is warm and clear, and the reefs beneath the surface are extraordinary in their variety. Coral heads rise like cathedrals from the sandy bottom. Fish of every conceivable color dart between them, and resting in the crevices, half buried in the sand, lying so still they look more like rocks than animals, are the blue-ringed octopus. They are among the most beautiful animals in the ocean. That much is undeniable. The base color shifts between yellow and brown and a pale cream, and across the skin, these extraordinary rings pulse and flash in vivid, electric blue. It is an iridescent blue, unlike almost anything else in nature. The kind of blue that seems lit from within. And that is precisely what makes the blue-ringed octopus so dangerous. Because the flashing rings are not decoration, they are a warning. They are the ocean's most urgent way of saying, "Do not touch me." The blue-ringed octopus is small. Most are no larger than a golf ball. Some are barely bigger than a coin. Snorkelers and divers who have no experience of them often mistake their size for safety. They pick them up. They photograph them in the palm of their hand. They post those photographs online. Some of those people are not alive to regret it. The octopus carries enough tetrodotoxin in its salivary glands to kill 26 adult humans. There is no antivenom. There is no cure. The toxin works by blocking sodium channels in nerve cells, causing paralysis to spread rapidly through the body. The victim remains conscious. The mind stays alert, while the muscles stop responding one by one. Without immediate respiratory support, death from suffocation follows within minutes. The blue-ringed octopus does not attack. It does not seek out divers or wade into shallow water looking for trouble. When the rings are not flashing, it is a shy, reclusive animal that spends most of its time hiding. It feeds on small crabs and shrimp. It does not want to bite a human. But when it is picked up, when it is handled and confined and frightened, it will. And the bite is painless. So painless, in fact, that many victims do not realize they have been bitten until the paralysis begins. By then, the toxin is already spreading through the bloodstream. The beauty of this animal is genuine and astonishing. The distance you must keep from it is absolute. From the shallow reefs of the Indo-Pacific, we move to the dense jungles of South and Central America, where the forest floor is covered in a mosaic of fallen leaves and twisted roots, and the kind of deep green shadow that makes everything inside it look slightly unreal. Here, in the leaf litter, on the rocks beside rainforest streams, and on the broad leaves of low-growing plants, live the poison dart frogs. There are over 100 species of them. They are almost absurdly beautiful. Brilliant scarlet with black spots, electric blue with dark stripes, bright yellow, vivid orange, green so intense it looks painted. They move through the forest with complete confidence, and that confidence is earned. Nothing eats them, nothing tries, because the skin of a poison dart frog is a delivery mechanism for some of the most potent biological toxins ever discovered. The golden poison dart frog, found in the rainforests of Western Colombia, is the most toxic of them all. A single individual carries enough batrachotoxin to kill 10 human adults. The toxin is stored in tiny glands just beneath the skin and is released through contact. A touch is enough. The batrachotoxin works by permanently opening the sodium channels in nerve and muscle cells, causing them to fire continuously. Muscles contract and cannot release. The heart, which is also a muscle, goes into arrest. Death follows rapidly. Indigenous Emberá hunters in Colombia discovered long ago that the skin secretions of this frog, applied to the tips of blowgun darts, made those darts extraordinarily lethal. That is where the name comes from. What makes the poison dart frog particularly compelling, from a scientific standpoint, is that the frogs do not actually produce the toxin themselves. They accumulate it from their diet of specific ants and beetles and other invertebrates that carry chemical precursors. Captive-bred poison dart frogs, raised on fruit flies and other non-toxic food, are harmless. But a wild frog, living in its natural forest environment, is a creature that should be observed with all the reverence and restraint it has spent millions of years demanding. The colors are the message. Every shade of red and orange and yellow in the natural world carries the same meaning. I will harm you if you touch me. Evolution has written that warning in the most vivid language it knows. The forests of Central America thin and give way eventually to the open water of the Gulf of Mexico, and from there to the Atlantic, and eventually to the coastal regions of the Mediterranean and the Indo-Pacific, where the next animal in our story lives its extraordinary and perilous life. The stonefish does not look like a fish. That is the problem. It looks like a rock. It looks like a piece of coral, encrusted with algae and sediment. It sits absolutely motionless on the reef bed, or in the sandy shallows, or in rock pools, left behind by the retreating tide, and it waits. The stonefish is the world's most venomous fish, and it is virtually invisible. The stonefish is a master of disguise. Its skin is rough and mottled, and covered in weed-like appendages that break up its outline completely. Its coloring matches the substrate beneath it so precisely that even experienced marine biologists have stepped directly onto stonefish they were looking for. The fish does not move. It barely breathes. It simply becomes the rock around it, and the water moves over it, and the fish inside it watches everything. Along the dorsal fin of the stonefish run 13 sharp spines. Each spine is connected at its base to a venom gland. The venom is not injected proactively. The stonefish does not stab things. When something steps on it or presses against it, the spines puncture the skin of whatever is pressing them, and the pressure of that contact drives venom up through grooves in the spines and into the wound. The venom contains a cocktail of proteins, including one called verrucotoxin, that causes immediate and catastrophic pain. Survivors consistently describe it as the worst pain a human being can experience. Cardiovascular failure, temporary paralysis, and tissue death at the wound site are all well-documented outcomes. Without treatment, death is possible, particularly in children. Divers and snorkelers encounter stonefish in the shallows of tropical reefs. Tourists walking along exposed reef flats at low tide step on them. Children playing in rock pools reach in and put their hands near them. The antivenom exists and is effective when administered quickly, but the stonefish operates in remote locations where medical facilities are often hours away. The rule in stonefish territory is the same rule that applies in all of these encounters. Look closely, look with wonder, and never allow the hand to follow the eye. From the reef flats of the Indo-Pacific, we travel to the hot, dry scrublands of the American Southwest, to the rocky desert landscapes of Arizona and New Mexico, and the surrounding region, where the sun-baked ground is full of crevices, and the crevices are full of things that sting. The Gila monster is the largest native lizard in the United States, and it is the only venomous lizard native to that country. It is remarkable. It is heavy-bodied and slow-moving, covered in bead-like scales of black and orange and pink, arranged in intricate mosaic patterns. It looks prehistoric. It looks like a piece of the Jurassic world that simply never got around to updating its appearance. And in a sense, that is exactly what it is. The Gila monster spends most of its life underground, or in rock shelters, emerging to bask and to hunt. It eats eggs, small mammals, birds, and other lizards. Its metabolism is so slow that it needs to eat only a few times a year. The fat stored in its thick tail sustains it through the long months of inactivity. When it does emerge, it moves with a kind of deliberate, heavy patience, as though it has all the time in the world and has decided, long ago, that rushing is beneath it. The venom of the Gila monster is delivered through grooved teeth in the lower jaw. Unlike snakes, which inject venom through hollow fangs in a rapid strike, the Gila monster bites down and holds on, chewing the venom into the wound. This tenacity in its bite is one of the things that makes it so alarming to encounter. A Gila monster that has bitten will not release easily. The venom causes intense pain, swelling, and in some cases, a sudden and dangerous drop in blood pressure. Deaths are extremely rare in healthy adults, but the encounter itself is genuinely traumatic. The reason people get bitten by Gila monsters is almost always the same. They see the extraordinary creature, they approach it, they try to pick it up or move it, or, in some cases, provoke it. The Gila monster will not hunt a human. It has no interest in humans, but it will defend itself with everything it has, and what it has is considerable. The warning signs are not subtle. When threatened, the Gila monster will gape widely, displaying the inside of its mouth, and hiss. This is not theatrical. This is a genuine invitation to reconsider. The ones who do not reconsider tend to remember the lesson for the rest of their lives. From the rocky deserts of the American Southwest, we cross to the forests of Southeast Asia, to the dense jungle rivers of Sumatra and Borneo, to the slow-moving waterways edged with mangroves, and the kind of thick, tangled vegetation that seems to swallow the daylight whole. Here, in the water, and on the banks beside it, lives one of the most medically significant snakes in the world. The Malayan pit viper is not the longest or the heaviest venomous snake in its range, but in terms of human fatalities, in terms of medical amputations and deaths and disfigurement caused by a single species in a single region, it is among the most consequential serpents on Earth. The Malayan pit viper is patterned in shades of brown and rust and gray, with a series of darker markings down its body that break up its outline so effectively on the forest floor that it disappears completely into the leaf litter. It is a stocky, muscular snake with a broad triangular head and heat-sensing pits between the eye and the nostril that allow it to detect warm-blooded prey with extraordinary precision in complete darkness. It is also profoundly irritable. Most venomous snakes will avoid confrontation if given the opportunity. The Malayan pit viper is less inclined toward generosity. The venom is hemotoxic and cytotoxic. It destroys red blood cells, disrupts the blood's ability to clot, and causes widespread tissue death. Bites result in massive internal hemorrhage, destruction of tissue at the bite site that sometimes requires surgical amputation, and, in untreated cases, death. The snake strikes with speed, entirely at odds with its heavy, slow-seeming body, and it does not always signal its intention in advance. A foot placed too near a resting viper in the leaf litter may provoke a strike with almost no warning. The forest communities that live alongside this snake have developed an intimate and respectful understanding of its habits and habitats. They know where it is likely to be found. They know how to move through the forest in ways that reduce the chance of a surprise encounter. The reverence with which they treat this animal is the reverence that all wild encounters with dangerous animals ultimately demand. Not fear, not hatred, not the impulse to kill, or to handle, or to prove something. Simple, deep, respectful awareness. We travel now to the open ocean, to the mid-Pacific, where the water is so clear and so deep that the bottom is a theory rather than a fact. Just below the surface, particularly near areas where currents meet and the plankton concentrates, the Portuguese man-of-war drifts with the wind and tide. It is not a jellyfish, though it is often called one. It is a siphonophore, which means it is not actually a single organism at all. It is a colonial organism, a floating community of individual animals called zooids, each one specialized for a particular function. The gas-filled float that rides at the surface is one zooid. The tentacles trailing beneath it are composed of many others. The feeding and reproductive structures are others still. Together they form something that functions as a single animal, but is, in biological terms, an extraordinary collective. The float of the man-of-war is translucent and often tinted in shades of blue and pink and violet. In the right light, it is genuinely lovely. It sails across the surface of the open ocean with a kind of idle grace, going wherever the wind takes it. The tentacles beneath it can extend to 15 meters or more, trailing in the water like blue threads, nearly invisible. The nematocysts packed along the length of those tentacles are triggered by contact, not by predatory intent, and they fire into whatever touches them with a speed that makes the mechanism effectively instantaneous. The sting of a man-of-war is memorably painful. The toxin causes immediate, intense burning and whip-like welts across the skin. In most healthy adults, the sting is not fatal, though it is agonizing, and the symptoms, which can include fever, shock, and cardiovascular complications, should be taken seriously. In people who are allergic to the venom, or who receive a very large dose from extensive contact with the tentacles, the outcome can be fatal, and the tentacles remain dangerous long after they are detached from the float. A man-of-war washed up on a beach, its float deflated and dull, its tentacles lying apparently inert on the wet sand, can still sting with full effectiveness. The zooids within them continue to function even when separated from the colony. Children who pick them up on beaches, drawn by the color and the strange alien texture, discover this in the most painful possible way. The colonies are sometimes concentrated by wind and current into groups that cover many square kilometers of ocean surface. Swimming through such a concentration is extraordinarily dangerous. Lifeguards in regions where man-of-war are common close beaches when the colonies approach. This is a creature that requires no prodding, no provocation, no curiosity of the reaching kind. It requires only a wide, clear berth. From the open Pacific, we travel to the tropical forests and savanna woodlands of sub-Saharan Africa, where the trees are tall and the air is thick with the sound of insects, and the river systems wind between grasslands that are home to some of the most famous wildlife on Earth. But it is not the lion or the elephant or the leopard that we are considering here. It is a small, unassuming primate that most tourists pass without a second glance. The slow loris lives in the forests of Southeast Asia, rather than Africa, and the encounter with it begins not in the wild, but in the markets and online platforms, where it is traded illegally as a pet, and in the viral videos that show it being stroked and tickled and apparently enjoying the experience, its round eyes wide and its arms raised above its head, in what many viewers interpret as pleasure. It is not pleasure, it is fear. The slow loris is the only venomous primate in the world. It produces a toxin in a gland on the inside of its elbow, and it mixes this secretion with saliva to produce a venom that it delivers through its bite. The venom is an allergen capable of causing anaphylactic shock. It is used in the wild to coat the fur of young lorises before the mother leaves to forage, protecting them from predators. It is also used defensively when the animal is threatened. The raised arms that appear in those tickling videos are the animal raising its elbow gland toward its mouth, a defensive behavior performed in response to fear and stress. The wide, unblinking eyes are not contentment. They are the expression of an animal that cannot look away from danger, a response deeply wired into a creature that is being handled against its will by something far larger than anything in its evolutionary history. In the wild, the slow loris is a secretive, nocturnal animal that moves through the forest canopy with extraordinary deliberateness. Its grip so strong, it can hang suspended from a branch for hours. It navigates by smell and by the light of the moon. It feeds on tree sap and insects and small vertebrates. It is a creature of deep shadow and slow precision. Its biology and behavior are still not fully understood. What is fully understood is that it should never be handled, never be purchased, and never be approached in the wild as though it were something that wants to make contact with a human hand. The animals in those videos have almost always had their teeth cut out with wire cutters to prevent the bite, a procedure performed without anesthesia and which frequently results in infection and death. The ones that are alive in those videos are living in a state of chronic stress and physical pain. The wild version, the intact version, the version that still carries its full complement of biological weaponry, deserves to be seen with the kind of reverent distance all truly wild things deserve. From the rainforests of Southeast Asia, we move to the shorelines of tropical oceans worldwide, to the warm, shallow water where the tide comes in across broad sandy flats, and the bottom is a mixture of mud and sand and coral rubble. Here, half buried and entirely still, the cone snail waits. There are over 700 species of cone snail, and they range from small and inconspicuous to genuinely large, their shells growing to lengths of over 20 centimeters. The shells of cone snails are among the most beautiful objects in the natural world. They are smooth and perfectly formed, patterned in arrangements of dots and lines and geometric shapes that seem designed by something with an aesthetic sensibility. For centuries, sailors and traders and collectors have gathered them on beaches. Some species were historically more valuable by weight than gold. And all of this collecting, all of this reaching down and picking up and turning over in the palm of the hand, has cost people their lives. The cone snail is a predatory animal. Different species hunt different prey, ranging from marine worms to fish. But all of them use the same method, a harpoon-like tooth called a radula, connected to a venom duct, which the snail can extend from any part of its body, including the end of its shell, that the collector is holding. The harpoon can penetrate clothing. The venom, called conotoxin, is extraordinarily complex, containing hundreds of different peptide compounds that act on the nervous system in multiple ways simultaneously. In fish-hunting cone snails, the venom is fast-acting enough to paralyze a fish before it can swim away. In humans, the geography cone snail, the most venomous species, delivers venom that causes localized pain and swelling, followed rapidly by numbness spreading through the body, vision disturbance, respiratory failure, cardiovascular collapse, and death. There is no anti-venom. Treatment is supportive. Many victims in remote coastal areas have died before they could reach help. The person who picks up a cone snail on a beach is almost never trying to provoke it. They are almost always doing exactly what any curious human being would do, admiring something beautiful enough to want to hold. The cone snail has no way to communicate its danger in terms a mammal will recognize. No bright colors, no threatening posture, no warning sound. Its only defense is its weapon, and it uses that weapon when it feels threatened. The shell in the palm of the hand is a cone snail that feels threatened. The message, as always, is the same. Look, admire, put nothing back in your pocket, touch nothing. We move now from the coastal shallows to the great inland forests of South and Central America, to the dense, dripping canopies that stretch from the Amazon basin north through Central America and into Mexico. The forest here is layered like a cathedral, the great emergent trees rising above the closed canopy, the understory below them full of shadow, and the sound of water dripping from leaf to leaf. In this understory, on the bark of trees and the undersides of branches, and in the dark spaces between the roots, live the bullet ants. They are large ants, among the largest in the world, measuring up to 3 centimeters in length. They are not particularly aggressive by ant standards. They do not recruit in large numbers to attack. A single worker, encountered on a trail, is not going to call for backup. But a single worker, disturbed or handled, will sting. And the sting of the bullet ant is the subject of the Schmidt Sting Pain Index, a classification system developed by entomologist Justin Schmidt, who personally experienced the stings of over 150 different Hymenoptera species in the course of his research. The bullet ant's sting occupies the highest level of that index. Schmidt described it as pure, intense, brilliant pain, like walking over flaming charcoal with a 3-inch nail embedded in your heel. The pain begins immediately upon the sting and lasts for 24 hours without diminishing. It is not primarily toxic in the way that the blue-ringed octopus or the cone snail is toxic. It does not cause cardiovascular failure in healthy adults. It causes pain. It causes a degree of pain that seems, to those who have experienced it, simply incompatible with continued ordinary life, a pain that demands total, exclusive attention and does not release that demand for the better part of a day. The Satare Mawe people of Brazil incorporate bullet ants into an initiation ritual for young men. Ants are woven alive into gloves while sedated with a natural anesthetic, and the young men wear those gloves for 10 minutes, receiving hundreds of stings. The ritual is performed 20 times over the course of months or years, before a young man is considered to have fully completed his passage to adulthood. The ants are not symbolic. The pain is not symbolic. The endurance required is the point. But for anyone encountering a bullet ant colony in the wild, outside of that cultural context, the message is simple. The ant is a wonder. Watch it. Do not put your hand anywhere near it. Across the planet now, to the rivers and lakes and marshes of sub-Saharan Africa, where the water is warm and the banks are thick with papyrus, and the hippopotamus spends its days half submerged and its nights on land, grazing the grass in wide, systematic sweeps. The hippo is the third largest land animal on Earth, after the elephant and the white rhinoceros. An adult male can weigh over 3,000 kilograms. Its skin is almost hairless and is kept moist by a natural secretion that is sometimes called blood sweat because of its reddish color, though it is neither blood nor sweat, but a unique biochemical fluid that functions as both sunscreen and antimicrobial protection. The hippo is, in almost every visual sense, magnificent. The hippopotamus kills more humans in Africa than any other large land animal. The statistic is disputed in its precise numbers, which are difficult to gather accurately in the regions where most encounters occur, but the principle is well established. Hippos are profoundly territorial in the water and unpredictably aggressive on land, particularly when between a human and the water, or when a female is separated from her calf. The canine teeth of a bull hippo can exceed 50 centimeters in length. The jaw can open to almost 180 degrees. The bite force has been measured at around 1,800 pounds per square inch. A hippo can bite a small boat clean in half. The challenge with hippos, from a conservation and safety perspective, is that their reputation as the docile, water-loving lumberers of popular imagination is so persistent and so wrong. They are photographed at rest, half submerged, eyes and ears just above the waterline, looking placid. Tourists approach in small boats for a closer view. Fishermen work the same stretches of water the hippos use to move between their grazing and resting sites. The animal that rises from the water under a boat is not attacking in any calculated, predatory sense. It is reacting. Its responses are fast, powerful, and often fatal to anyone in their path. The rivers of Africa command an awareness that photographs taken from the bank never quite convey. From the great rivers of Africa, we come finally to the open ocean and the rocky coastlines of the Pacific, to a creature that has been part of human mythology and human fear for as long as human beings have looked out to sea. But the animal we are describing here is not one of the large, well-known species of shark. It is something smaller, more common, more likely to be encountered by a snorkeler or a recreational diver than by anyone working in deep water. The moray eel lives in the crevices and holes of coral reefs and rocky coastlines throughout tropical and subtropical waters worldwide. It can grow to over 3 meters in length. It spends most of its time with just its head visible from the entrance to its den, opening and closing its jaw in a slow, rhythmic way that looks threatening, but is in fact simply breathing. Water passes in through the open mouth and out through the gills. The moray eel breathes with its mouth. The moray eel has a second set of jaws, called pharyngeal jaws, located in its throat. When it bites, these secondary jaws extend forward, grasp the prey, and draw it back into the throat. This prevents prey from escaping once bitten. It makes release of a human hand, once bitten, extremely difficult. The primary teeth are long, thin, and recurved, designed to hold rather than cut. A moray that has bitten a hand that reached into its crevice will not simply let go. Pulling the hand away tears flesh. The secondary jaws hold fast. Divers who have been bitten by large morays have suffered serious lacerations, severed tendons, and in extreme cases, the loss of fingers. The moray eel does not seek out human contact. Divers who observe them from a distance are perfectly safe. The problem arises almost invariably from the same human behavior, reaching into holes. The holes in the reef that look empty are often occupied. The crevice that seems like an interesting thing to put a hand into is exactly the kind of crevice a large moray has been living in for years. The reef is full of spaces that belong to things we cannot see from outside them. The hand that respects that fact stays whole. There is a version of this story that is not about danger at all. It is about a different kind of relationship between human beings and the wild world, the one that has always sustained both. It is the relationship that the communities living beside these reefs and rivers and forests have maintained for generations, built not on the impulse to touch, but on the discipline to observe. The shark feeders of Fiji, who know the behavior of bull sharks well enough to dive among them. The fishermen who have learned to set their lines in ways that protect the albatross. The reef gardeners, who replant coral, not because anyone has asked them to, but because the reef belongs to the community, and the community understands what happens when it dies. This is the relationship that makes all the difference. Not the impulsive, reaching, collecting, extracting kind of engagement with the natural world, but the patient, watching, listening kind. The kind that treats the blue-ringed octopus as a miracle of evolution that deserves its own space in the ocean. The kind that sees the poison dart frog not as a curiosity to be picked up and photographed, but as the living result of 60 million years of chemical negotiation between species. The kind that understands that the stonefish's invisibility is not a trick, but a deeply elegant solution to the problem of survival. One that has been working since long before the first human being stood on the edge of a reef and felt the urge to reach down. The animals in this account are extraordinary, every one of them.